small town where the streets were often empty by dusk, Thomas, a man in his early 40s, lived a life marked by quiet solitude. His days were spent in routine. Wake up at dawn, head to work, and return to his modest home just before the sun set. On this particular evening, Thomas decided to break his routine by stopping at the local dollar store. Not for any particular need, but perhaps to extend his day a bit longer, to fill the emptiness with some mundane task inside. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a stark, artificial glow that made everything look a bit sadder, a bit more worn. Thomas wandered through the aisles, picking up random items, a pack of batteries, some light bulbs, and a can of soup. His mind was elsewhere, lost in the echo of his own loneliness. As he moved toward the checkout, his gaze inadvertently caught the reflection in a shiny surface. There, in the mirror of a shelf, was a young woman, perhaps in her mid-20s, with an effortless beauty that seemed out of place in the drab setting of the dollar store. Her hair was tied back, revealing the delicate lines of her face, and her eyes carried a story of their own, one that Thomas could only guess at. He watched her for a moment, not with any intention, but with a sort of resigned admiration. She was selecting items with a focus that suggested urgency or perhaps just survival. Their paths crossed several times as they maneuvered through the narrow aisles, but they never spoke. Their interactions limited to polite nods and sidesteps. Finally, at the checkout, Thomas stood in line, his items placed on the conveyor belt. The young woman was just behind him, and as the line moved, she spoke for the first time, her voice soft but clear. "Excuse me, sir. Can I get something from behind you on the rack?" Thomas stepped aside, his heart unexpectedly heavy. He watched as she reached for a small package of candy, something trivial, yet perhaps holding significance for her. She thanked him with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and he nodded, feeling the weight of his own years. The transaction completed, they left the store, walking in different directions. Thomas felt an acute awareness of his isolation, years stretching out behind him like the empty shelves of the store after closing time. He realized in that moment that while they shared the same space, their worlds were profoundly separate. The young woman, with her life still unfolding, was just another passerby in his increasingly solitary existence. That night, Thomas sat in his living room, the items from the dollar store on the table before him, untouched. The encounter had stirred something within him, a reminder of dreams unfulfilled and connections never made. In the silence of his home, he felt the profound sadness of a life where even the simplest interactions were fleeting, where beauty and youth passed by, leaving behind only the ache of what might have been.